Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. We're going to uncover a 400-year-old mystery that was literally found sewn into the coat of a dead mathematical genius. Picture this. The year is 1662 in Paris. One of the greatest scientific minds in human history, Blaise Pascal, had just died at the really young age of 39. So his family starts sorting through his belongings, right? And they find something deeply, deeply unusual hidden inside the lining of his favorite jacket. It was this folded piece of parchment, secretly kept pressed right against his chest for 8 years, just completely covered in cramped, tiny handwriting. Now look at these intense words on the screen here. Fire, joy, peace. He scribbled these down during this frantic 2-hour spiritual awakening that he just simply called the Night of Fire. You have to understand, before this night, he basically viewed the universe as a giant, cold mathematical equation. But during those 2 hours, he didn't experience some abstract force. He felt this overwhelming, dramatic presence of joy and certainty. I mean, he was so impacted by it that he literally stitched the record of it into his clothes, just to keep it close to his heart forever. But here's the thing. The jacket wasn't the only clue he left behind. In his room, his family found closet boxes just overflowing with thousands of random, unorganized scraps of paper. Some were essays, some were tiny cutout strips tied with string, others were just messy outlines. We really have to ask ourselves, why did Blaise Pascal pivot entirely from strict scientific logic to theology and leave behind this chaotic puzzle of a manuscript? Well, he was actually trying to write the ultimate defense of faith for a world that was rapidly losing itself to cold science, but he died before he could organize a single page. Section 1. The 17th Century Tech Bro. To really get his philosophy, we've got to establish exactly who Pascal was, because it gives his words so much weight. He wasn't just some sleepy monk locked away in a quiet monastery writing poetry. The guy was an absolute scientific powerhouse. Honestly, you could call him the ultimate 17th century tech bro. He was at the bleeding edge of the scientific revolution. By age 12, after his dad actually banned math books, thinking it would ruin his health, Pascal secretly figured out the core rules of geometry on his bedroom floor using charcoal. By 16, his work was so advanced that René Descartes thought there was no way a teenager actually wrote it. And at 19, he saw his dad struggling with tax accounting and essentially invented the mechanical ancestor to the smartphone you're probably holding right now, the world's first functional mechanical calculator. So despite all of this monumental success, chronic physical illness and that Night of Fire awakening made him drift away from science to draft these fragmented notes. Because he died so early, his family just gathered up all the loose scraps and published them under a really simple title, Pensées, which just translates to thoughts. And ironically, because it was never finished, it became a 300-year puzzle for editors. But it's also one of the most honest, raw books ever put together. It doesn't read like an academic textbook at all. It's more like a modern, high-level social media feed of just brilliant one-liners. Moving on to Section 2, the thinking read and the human paradox. This brings us to his first really major theme. Pascal looked at humanity and saw this massive, confusing contradiction between human greatness and human misery. He thought we were the most baffling creatures in the entire universe because we are simultaneously incredibly magnificent and deeply, deeply tragic. To explain this, he used this brilliant metaphor. A reed growing by a river is incredibly fragile. A tiny breeze bends it. A single drop of water could crush it. The universe doesn't even have to try hard to destroy us. A microscopic virus or a falling rock ends it all in a second. But, he argues, even if the universe crushed us, our self-awareness of our own mortality makes us infinitely nobler than the mindless, unfeeling universe that kills us. He actually took this a step further and called us dethroned kings. Think about it. A king thrown into the mud is only miserable because he remembers what it was like to sit on a throne, right? A dog isn't miserable that it doesn't have a 5-year career plan. It just lives. But us humans, we intuitively remember a higher state of perfect existence. We deeply desire absolute truth, unending joy, and infinite life. But our actual reality is full of confusion, boredom, and death. We're miserable because we're essentially homesick for a paradise we can barely remember. Section 3, the problem with distraction. So how do we cope with this tragedy? Well, humans developed a coping mechanism. And this brings us directly to the most relatable and, honestly, the most chilling observation in his entire work. It feels like he wrote it yesterday. He called this mechanism divertissement, distraction. Pascal noticed that if you give a person food, shelter, and comfort and just put them in a quiet room, they won't enjoy the peace. They get incredibly restless. In the 1600s, this meant wealthy nobles chasing a wild hare on horseback. They didn't even want the rabbit. They just wanted the loud horns and the mental noise to avoid sitting with their own thoughts. Today, that looks a whole lot like endlessly scrolling on social media. Just let that quote sink in for a second. This brilliantly explains why we check our phones the exact second we wake up, or why we pull them out while waiting for literally 10 seconds in an elevator. We aren't actually looking for entertainment. We're using distraction as a digital anesthetic. We're running away from the quiet ache of being human, basically keeping ourselves numb on a high-speed train toward our own mortality.
Section 4. The Cosmic Abyss and the Two Infinities.
Now, if looking inward at our own thoughts scares us, Pascal argued that looking outward was equally terrifying. He lived when the very first telescopes and microscopes were being invented, so suddenly humanity is seeing reality on two completely incomprehensible scales. It totally shattered our cozy little illusion of our place in the universe. He called them the two infinites. Look up, and our planet is just a meaningless speck of dust in the massive macrocosm of outer space. Look down through a microscope, and you find another endless abyss of incredibly small microscopic particles. We are a nothing compared to space, and an everything compared to a microscopic cell. We're totally paralyzed in the middle.
Imagine standing outside under a pitch-black, infinitely vast sky, way out, far from the city lights. That creeping feeling of total insignificance, that's exactly what Pascal was writing about here. It's a chilling reminder that science alone cannot answer our desperate need for meaning. The universe is incredibly massive, completely unfeeling, and when we scream out into it asking, "Why are we here?" it responds with absolutely nothing, just silence.
Section 5. Reason versus the heart.
Because of this terrifying cosmic silence, this master mathematician realized there are strict limits to cold logic. Science can easily explain how the gears of a clock work, but it completely fails to explain why a human being feels broken or lonely. He argued we have two ways of processing the world: the logical, mathematical mind and the intuitive mind, what he calls the heart. You can't logically prove with a math equation that a sunset is beautiful or that your family loves you. Those ultimate truths have to be intuitively felt by the heart. Trying to use mathematical proof for meaning is literally like trying to hear music with your eyes.
Section 6. Pascal's ultimate wager. And that realization sets the stage for his most famous, debated, and frankly misunderstood argument. He frames life and the search for God as a high-stakes casino game. You're already at the table, you can't opt out, and you have to place a bet. Using the probability theory he invented, he framed it like this. If you bet on God and you're right, you gain infinity. If you're wrong, you lose a tiny, finite amount of temporary earthly pleasures. But if you bet against God and you're wrong, you suffer an infinite loss. Pascal says that risking a finite loss for a potential infinite gain is the only mathematically rational choice a sane gambler could make.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Anticipating his critics who say, you can't just mathematically force yourself to believe something, Pascal completely agreed. He admitted you can't fake faith. The wager wasn't meant to be a magic spell. It was a wake-up call for comfortable intellectuals. He said, if you want to believe but your intellect is blocking you, change your daily habits. Go through the motions of humility and kindness, and you might just quiet your ego enough to open your heart. Section 7. The God-Shaped Void.
So, what are we actually trying to fulfill when we search for meaning? Why are we endlessly chasing the next promotion or that next dopamine hit on our screens? We all have this internal void, but as Pascal points out, we try to stuff temporary, finite things into an infinite vacuum in our souls. Trying to cure your existential dread with money or followers is literally like trying to fill the ocean with small pebbles. No matter how many pebbles you throw in, the ocean stays deeply empty. Only something infinite can fill an infinite space. If you're going to pick up this masterpiece today, you've got to approach it right. Do not read it cover to cover like a novel. Treat it as a daily philosophical mirror. Read just 5 to 10 fragments a day. Whether you are a strict, data-driven atheist or a super comfortable believer, his sharp observations are absolutely guaranteed to challenge your assumptions about how you live your life.
He didn't leave us a polished, perfectly edited monument of a book. He left us something way better, a brilliant, messy reminder of our own nature. Yes, physically, the universe swallows us up. But our true dignity, our real power, comes entirely from our capacity to think and seek the truth. By our thought, we encompass the universe that crushes us.
So before we completely wrap up this explainer, I have a challenge for you. Before you move on to your next distraction, before you open another app, just put your screen down. Seriously, just for 5 minutes.
Sit in total silence and ask yourself what you are really running from. Are you just a fragile reed blowing in the wind, or are you a thinking reed?
Please like and subscribe.